After designing 3 award-winning infrastructure projects that generated $12 million in revenue for my father's construction firm, I discovered he had quietly replaced my engineering degree with my half-brother's trade certification in his office display case. I walked past that glass cabinet with calculated composure, knowing something he didn't understand about professional licensing boards and the power they held over his entire business empire. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted the blueprints spread across her drafting table for the final time, ensuring every specification aligned perfectly with the municipal engineering standards that would govern the Riverside Metropolitan Bridge project. 6 years of leading the structural engineering division at Vasquez Construction had taught her that precision in documentation prevented costly revisions during construction phases. Her team of 8 licensed engineers had spent 14 months developing what would become the city's most significant infrastructure achievement in over 2 decades. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, illuminating detailed technical drawings that represented more than mere construction plans. Each line and calculation embodied years of advanced education, professional experience, and unwavering commitment to public safety standards that protected thousands of daily commuters. The bridge design incorporated innovative materials and engineering techniques that would reduce maintenance costs by 43% while extending structural lifespan beyond standard industry expectations. Elena stood before the presentation screen, reviewing slides that would be delivered to the City Planning Commission within 2 hours. Her laser pointer remained steady as she mentally rehearsed technical explanations that would demonstrate how her team's approach addressed environmental concerns, budget constraints, and long-term operational requirements simultaneously. The project represented the culmination of expertise developed through years of challenging assignments that had established her reputation throughout the regional engineering community. The conference room began filling with familiar faces from the City Planning Department, Environmental Oversight Committee, and Construction Management Team. Mayor Patricia Rodriguez entered first, her expression reflecting the cautious optimism that characterized public officials evaluating major infrastructure investments. City Engineer Michael Chen followed, carrying comprehensive review documents that contained months of analysis regarding structural specifications and safety protocols. Elena initiated her presentation with characteristic confidence, advancing through slides that documented extensive geological surveys, environmental impact assessments, and traffic flow optimization studies. The bridge design emerged from careful consideration of multiple factors, including seismic stability requirements, flood management protocols, and pedestrian accessibility standards that would serve the community for generations. The innovative cable stay design reduces material requirements by 28% compared to traditional suspension bridge approaches, Elena explained, highlighting technical drawings that illustrated her team's engineering solutions. Simultaneously, the structural configuration provides enhanced wind resistance and earthquake tolerance that exceeds current building codes by significant margins. The breakthrough represented more than technical achievement. Elena's approach addressed fundamental challenges that had prevented previous bridge proposals from advancing through the approval process. Her team had identified cost-effective solutions for soil stabilization issues that had complicated earlier designs while developing traffic management strategies that would minimize construction disruption for local businesses and residents. Mayor Rodriguez leaned forward with obvious interest in the financial implications. Elena, these cost projections appear substantially lower than estimates we received for alternative designs. How confident is your team in maintaining budget parameters throughout the construction timeline? Elena had anticipated this critical question, having spent considerable time with the project accounting team to develop comprehensive cost-benefit analyses that reflected realistic market conditions and potential variables. Our estimates incorporate 15% contingency reserves for unforeseen circumstances, Mayor Rodriguez. Additionally, the phased construction approach allows for budget adjustments between project stages if necessary. The presentation continued for 58 minutes, covering environmental protection measures, construction safety protocols, long-term maintenance requirements, and community benefit projections. Elena felt the familiar satisfaction that accompanied thorough preparation meeting successful execution. Her team had created something that would transform transportation infrastructure while providing measurable economic benefits for the metropolitan region. City engineer Chen raised questions about foundation engineering specifications, leading to detailed discussions about soil-bearing capacity calculations and deep foundation requirements. Elena referenced comprehensive geotechnical reports that her team had commissioned from independent testing laboratories to ensure accurate subsurface condition assessments. The foundation design incorporates driven steel piles extending 63 feet below grade level to reach stable bedrock formations, Elena explained, displaying cross-sectional diagrams that illustrated subsurface engineering solutions. This approach provides structural stability for earthquake loads exceeding those recorded in regional seismic history. Environmental Committee Representative Sarah Williams inquired about wildlife protection measures during construction phases, prompting Elena to outline comprehensive mitigation strategies that would preserve local ecosystems while enabling infrastructure development. Her team had consulted with environmental scientists and wildlife biologists to develop approaches that satisfied regulatory requirements without compromising project viability. As the presentation concluded, Mayor Rodriguez addressed the Planning Commission with characteristic directness. This represents exactly the kind of innovative infrastructure development that will position our city for sustainable growth. Elena, your team has delivered exceptional work that addresses every concern raised during preliminary discussions. The unanimous approval felt like validation for years of dedicated effort. Elena gathered her materials while accepting congratulations from commission members who recognized the significance of what had been accomplished. Walking back to her office, she experienced the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing professional expertise has contributed to meaningful community improvement. Her assistant, Maria Santos, looked up from her desk with anticipation that had characterized the entire team throughout the morning. How did the presentation proceed? Everyone has been asking about the Commission's response. Better than anticipated. We received full approval for immediate project initiation. Elena smiled, appreciating the collective effort that had made this achievement possible. Please ask the team to gather in the main conference room at 2 o'clock. I want to share the Commission's decision and discuss implementation phases. The afternoon meeting buzzed with excitement as Elena's engineering team learned their innovation would soon transform the city's transportation infrastructure. Structural engineers who had spent countless hours perfecting load calculations now saw their work approaching real-world application. Environmental specialists who had conducted extensive impact assessments understood their diligence would benefit the broader community for decades. Thomas Kim, the lead structural analyst, raised his hand with characteristic thoughtfulness. Elena, do you anticipate other municipalities will request similar bridge designs once they observe our construction results? Absolutely. This success creates opportunities for expanding our infrastructure consulting services beyond the local market. Our reputation for innovative solutions will attract projects throughout the state. Elena surveyed the room, observing faces that reflected pride, excitement, and determination. These professionals had chosen to contribute their expertise toward creating something unprecedented in regional infrastructure development. Their collaboration represented more than professional cooperation. It demonstrated how shared purpose and technical excellence could generate extraordinary results that served public interests. The meeting concluded with assignments for the implementation phase. Each team member understood their responsibilities for transforming approved designs into operational infrastructure. Elena felt grateful for the opportunity to lead such dedicated professionals toward achieving something that would benefit countless community members while advancing their firm's position in an increasingly competitive engineering marketplace. That evening, Elena remained in her office reviewing construction schedules and resource allocation plans that would govern the 18-month building timeline. The office had grown quiet, with most colleagues having departed for their personal commitments. She appreciated these solitary moments for reflection, processing the significance of what her team had accomplished, and considering the challenges that lay ahead. Her phone displayed a text message from her husband, Carlos. Congratulations on the bridge approval. Isabella wants to celebrate with dinner at your favorite restaurant when you get home. Elena smiled, remembering that professional achievements meant little without family relationships to share them with. She gathered her belongings and headed toward the parking garage, looking forward to celebrating with family members who had supported her dedication to this project throughout its development phases. The drive home provided time for contemplating the journey ahead. Construction would require careful attention to detail, continuous quality monitoring, and adaptive problem-solving approaches. However, Elena felt confident in her team's ability to navigate challenges while maintaining the high standards that had characterized their design development process. She reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment of professional triumph. The engineering degree from Stanford University had been earned through years of rigorous study in structural mechanics, materials, science, and project management. The professional engineering license had required additional years of supervised experience and comprehensive examinations that tested both theoretical knowledge and practical application skills. The projects that had established her reputation represented more than technical accomplishments. The Harbor District renovation had required innovative solutions for retrofitting vintage buildings while preserving historical architectural elements. The Metro Transit expansion had demanded coordination between multiple engineering disciplines and government agencies to achieve complex infrastructure improvements. The industrial park development had necessitated environmental remediation approaches that transformed contaminated land into productive commercial space. Each successful project had built upon previous experiences, while expanding Elena's expertise in areas that extended beyond traditional structural engineering. She had developed specialized knowledge in sustainable construction practices, environmental impact mitigation, and community engagement strategies that enhanced project outcomes while satisfying diverse stakeholder requirements. As she pulled into her driveway, Elena reflected on the satisfaction that comes from knowing professional expertise contributes to something larger than individual success. The Riverside Metropolitan Bridge would improve transportation efficiency while creating economic opportunities for local businesses. More importantly, it demonstrated how innovative engineering combined with dedicated execution could transform entire communities. The foundation of her professional reputation had been established through years of consistent excellence, ethical practice, and commitment to public safety standards that protected community interests. Tomorrow would begin the process of building something extraordinary upon that foundation, creating infrastructure that would serve future generations while showcasing the highest standards of engineering practice. The celebration dinner with Carlos and their daughter Isabella provided the perfect conclusion to a day that marked a significant milestone in Elena's career. As she listened to Isabella's animated discussion about her own academic pursuits, Elena felt grateful for the opportunity to demonstrate through personal example that dedication, expertise, and integrity could create lasting positive impact in professional endeavors. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Riverside Metropolitan Bridge project represented more than engineering achievement. It embodied the principles that had guided Elena's career development and would continue to influence her approach to future challenges. The foundation was solid, the design was approved, and the construction phase would begin with confidence that comes from thorough preparation and unwavering commitment to excellence. The memo arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered through the company's internal communications system, while Elena was reviewing structural calculations for the Riverside Bridge foundation specifications. She opened the electronic notification, expecting routine administrative updates about project timelines or safety protocol revisions. Instead, she found an announcement that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of her carefully established position within Vasquez Construction. Effective immediately, Vasquez Construction welcomes Diego Vasquez to our leadership team as Assistant Project Director. Diego brings valuable hands-on construction experience and fresh perspectives from his recent completion of the Advanced Construction Management Certification Program. He will collaborate with our engineering division to ensure seamless integration between design development and field implementation. Elena read the announcement twice, processing implications that extended far beyond simple organizational expansion. Diego Vasquez was her 26-year-old half-brother, the son of her father Roberto's second marriage to Carmen, a relationship that had begun during Elena's final year at Stanford. Diego had completed his high school education through alternative programs and subsequently pursued various trade certifications, rather than traditional four-year university studies. The Advanced Construction Management Certification represented a 6-month program offered through the local community college, designed to provide fundamental knowledge about project coordination, safety protocols, and basic construction scheduling. While valuable for entry-level positions, the certification could not substitute for the years of advanced engineering education professional licensing requirements, and specialized expertise that Elena had developed throughout her career. Maria Santos knocked gently on Elena's office door, her expression reflecting the curiosity that had become common among staff members since the announcement began circulating through company communications. "Elena, your father wants to meet with you at 11 o'clock this morning. He asked me to confirm your availability for a discussion about organizational restructuring." "Of course. Please confirm the meeting and ask if he needs any specific project materials prepared for review." Elena spent the next hour reviewing comprehensive documentation about current engineering projects, including the Riverside Bridge specifications, the Harbor District renovation progress reports, and preliminary designs for the proposed Metro Transit expansion. She wanted to ensure their discussion included complete information about her division's contributions to company success and ongoing project requirements. At precisely 11 o'clock, Elena walked into her father's executive office where Roberto Vasquez sat behind his mahogany desk reviewing construction photographs from recent project completions. The office walls displayed an impressive collection of industry awards, professional certifications, and photographs documenting the company's growth from a small residential contractor to a major infrastructure development firm. Among these displays, Elena noticed a new addition: Diego's Advanced Construction Management Certificate, mounted in an ornate frame beside Roberto's business licenses. "Elena, thank you for making time to discuss our company's evolution and strategic planning initiatives. As you know, successful businesses must adapt to changing market conditions and emerging opportunities." Roberto's tone carried the measured formality that characterized his approach to business discussions, though Elena detected an underlying tension that suggested the conversation would address more than routine organizational matters. Her father had built Vasquez Construction through decades of hard work, starting with small residential projects and gradually expanding into commercial and infrastructure development through strategic relationship building and quality workmanship. Diego's arrival provides an excellent opportunity to strengthen coordination between our engineering division and field operations. Roberto continued, his attention focused on documents rather than making direct eye contact with Elena. His practical construction experience offers perspectives that complement the theoretical knowledge developed through academic programs. The characterization of Elena's Stanford engineering degree and professional experience as merely theoretical knowledge felt particularly dismissive, given her direct involvement in every aspect of project development from initial site surveys through final construction oversight. Her engineering expertise had prevented numerous costly construction errors while identifying innovative solutions that had saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars in material costs and labor expenses. "I believe Diego's hands-on experience will provide valuable insights for optimizing project efficiency and cost management," Roberto added, advancing to specific organizational changes that would redistribute responsibilities within the engineering division. Effective immediately, he will assume oversight responsibilities for field coordination and construction scheduling across all active projects. Elena felt her professional composure being tested as she processed the implications of transferring critical project management responsibilities to someone whose qualifications consisted primarily of a 6-month certification program. The coordination between engineering specifications and field implementation required deep understanding of structural requirements, material properties, safety protocols, and regulatory compliance standards that demanded years of specialized education and supervised experience. "Roberto, the coordination responsibilities you've described require extensive knowledge of engineering principles, building codes, and regulatory requirements. Perhaps Diego could benefit from working closely with our engineering team to develop this expertise gradually while maintaining current oversight structures." "Elena, I appreciate your concern for maintaining quality standards, but organizational efficiency sometimes requires bold decisions that challenge traditional approaches. Diego's fresh perspective will bring innovative thinking to processes that may have become overly complicated through academic influence." The assertion that engineering precision represented unnecessary complication rather than essential protection for public safety revealed fundamental misunderstandings about professional responsibilities and regulatory requirements. Elena had invested years in developing expertise that ensured structural designs met or exceeded safety standards while optimizing cost-effectiveness and construction feasibility. Roberto stood and walked to the window overlooking the construction yard where current projects were stored and organized. "I've also decided that Diego will represent the company at the upcoming Regional Construction Association conference. His practical experience will resonate well with industry professionals who value hands-on knowledge over theoretical credentials. The conference represented an important networking opportunity that Elena had attended for the past 4 years, building relationships with municipal engineers, architectural firms, and potential clients who contributed significantly to company growth. Her presentations about innovative engineering solutions had generated substantial interest in Vasquez Construction's capabilities, while establishing her reputation as a thought leader in sustainable infrastructure development. The conference presentations typically focus on technical innovations and engineering solutions that require detailed understanding of structural principles and regulatory compliance. Elena observed, hoping to emphasize the specialized knowledge requirements without directly challenging Roberto's decision. Diego's construction experience provides practical insights that conference attendees will find more relevant than academic theories. Real-world problem-solving approaches often prove more valuable than textbook solutions. Elena recognized the futility of arguing against decisions that Roberto had clearly made without considering her input or expertise. The characterization of her engineering education and professional experience as academic theory versus practical knowledge revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of how technical expertise informed successful construction outcomes. The meeting continued with discussions about budget allocations, project timelines, and reporting structures that would govern operations under the modified organizational approach. Roberto outlined expectations for Elena's continued involvement in design development while transferring project oversight responsibilities to Diego, despite his limited experience with complex infrastructure projects. "I want to emphasize that these changes reflect strategic positioning for future growth, rather than dissatisfaction with current performance," Roberto concluded, though his tone suggested the explanation was intended to prevent objections rather than acknowledge Elena's contributions to company success. Elena gathered her materials and returned to her office, processing the magnitude of changes that would fundamentally alter her role within the organization she had helped build through years of dedicated effort. The transfer of project oversight responsibilities to Diego represented more than administrative restructuring. It constituted a rejection of professional expertise in favor of family relationships and personal preferences. Maria Santos looked up from her desk with obvious concern about the extended duration of Elena's meeting with Roberto. How did the discussion proceed? "The engineering team has been asking about potential changes to project assignments and reporting procedures. There will be significant modifications to our organizational structure. Diego will be assuming project oversight responsibilities while our division continues design development and technical support functions." Elena closed her office door and spent the remainder of the morning reviewing the implications of organizational changes that would affect every aspect of her professional responsibilities. The Riverside Bridge project, which had received unanimous approval based on her technical innovations and comprehensive planning, would now be overseen by someone whose qualifications consisted primarily of theoretical knowledge about construction management, rather than practical experience with complex infrastructure development. Her computer screen displayed project timelines and resource allocation plans that had been developed through careful consideration of engineering requirements, regulatory compliance needs, and construction feasibility constraints. Under Diego's oversight, these carefully balanced schedules would likely be modified based on simplified approaches that prioritized speed over systematic quality control measures. The telephone rang at 12:30 with a call from city engineer Michael Chen, whose previous conversations with Elena had focused on technical specifications and regulatory compliance requirements for the Riverside Bridge project. "Elena, I wanted to follow up on the foundation engineering details we discussed during last week's review meeting. Have there been any modifications to the pile driving specifications or soil bearing capacity calculations?" "The engineering specifications remain unchanged, Michael. However, there have been some organizational adjustments within our company structure that may affect communication protocols for ongoing project coordination." Michael's tone reflected immediate concern about potential changes that could impact project quality or timeline adherence. "What kind of organizational adjustments?" "The City Planning Commission expects consistent technical oversight throughout the construction phases." Elena chose her words carefully, recognizing that municipal contracts required specific qualifications and professional certifications for project oversight personnel. Our company has expanded the project management team to include additional construction coordination responsibilities. I'll forward updated contact information for field communication purposes. After ending the call, Elena reflected on the challenges that would emerge when municipal engineers discovered that project oversight had been transferred to someone without professional engineering credentials or relevant experience with infrastructure development. Construction contracts typically specified minimum qualification requirements for supervisory personnel, including professional licensing and demonstrated expertise with similar project types. The afternoon brought additional concerns as Elena reviewed contract specifications that required licensed professional engineers to maintain oversight throughout construction phases. Diego's advanced construction management certification, while valuable for entry-level positions, did not satisfy regulatory requirements for infrastructure projects that affected public safety and involved municipal funding sources. Elena spent the evening at home explaining the organizational changes to Carlos, who understood the construction industry sufficiently to recognize the potential problems created by transferring technical oversight to unqualified personnel. Does Diego understand the regulatory requirements and professional liability issues associated with infrastructure project management? I doubt Roberto has considered those implications. The decision appears to be based on family relationships rather than professional qualifications or project requirements. As Elena prepared for the challenges ahead, she understood that maintaining project quality and regulatory compliance would require diplomatic approaches that protected public safety without directly challenging family dynamics. The foundation of professional excellence she had established would be tested by circumstances that prioritized personal relationships over technical expertise and ethical responsibilities. The Rising Star's arrival had fundamentally altered the organizational landscape, creating conflicts between family loyalty and professional integrity that would shape every decision moving forward. Elena faced the challenge of protecting project quality while navigating family relationships that had become complicated by business considerations and personal preferences that contradicted professional standards. The first indication of mounting pressure arrived through a phone call from the State Professional Engineering Board on Thursday morning, while Elena was reviewing updated construction schedules that Diego had submitted for the Riverside Bridge project. The caller identified herself as Senior Investigator Patricia Morrison, whose tone carried the professional gravity that characterized regulatory oversight communications. Dr. Vasquez, we are conducting a routine compliance review of infrastructure projects involving state funding sources. Our records indicate that Vasquez Construction received approval for the Riverside Metropolitan Bridge project, with you designated as the supervising professional engineer. We need to schedule an inspection to verify that qualified personnel maintain appropriate oversight throughout construction phases. Elena felt her chest tighten as she processed the implications of the compliance review, understanding immediately that regulatory authorities would discover the organizational changes that had transferred project oversight to Diego, despite his lack of professional engineering credentials. State infrastructure projects required continuous supervision by licensed engineers whose qualifications met specific educational and experience standards that protected public safety. Of course, Ms. Morrison. I remain actively involved in the project and can coordinate the inspection according to your schedule requirements. What specific documentation will you need to review during the site visit? Quote, we will need to examine current organizational charts, project oversight protocols, daily supervision logs, and professional licensing verification for all personnel involved in design review and construction oversight responsibilities. The inspection has been scheduled for next Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning. After ending the call, Elena immediately recognized the serious complications that would emerge when state investigators discovered that project oversight had been transferred to someone whose qualifications consisted primarily of a 6-month construction management certification rather than the professional engineering license required for infrastructure projects. The regulatory violation could result in project suspension, contract termination, and potential legal liability for the company. Elena walked directly to Roberto's office, finding him reviewing financial reports with Diego, whose presence at strategic planning discussions had become increasingly common despite his limited understanding of engineering principles and regulatory requirements. The atmosphere in the room reflected the casual confidence that characterized individuals who had not yet encountered the serious consequences of regulatory noncompliance. Roberto, I need to discuss an urgent matter regarding the Riverside Bridge project. The State Professional Engineering Board has scheduled a compliance inspection for next Tuesday to verify that qualified personnel maintain appropriate oversight throughout construction phases. Roberto looked up from the financial documents with obvious irritation at the interruption, his expression suggesting that regulatory requirements represented unnecessary bureaucratic obstacles rather than essential protections for public safety. Diego shifted uncomfortably in his chair, perhaps beginning to understand that his new responsibilities involved legal obligations that extended beyond construction scheduling and cost management. What specific requirements do they need to verify? Roberto asked, though his tone suggested reluctance to engage with regulatory complexities that might complicate his organizational preferences. State law requires that infrastructure projects involving public funding maintain continuous supervision by licensed professional engineers. The investigators will review organizational charts and oversight protocols to ensure compliance with professional licensing requirements. Diego leaned forward with obvious concern about implications he had not previously considered. Does that mean I cannot continue with the project coordination responsibilities you assigned to me? Elena chose her response carefully, recognizing the need to address regulatory requirements without directly challenging Roberto's family-based decisions. The state requires specific professional qualifications for supervisory roles on infrastructure projects. These requirements exist to protect public safety and ensure adherence to engineering standards. Roberto's expression reflected growing frustration with regulatory constraints that conflicted with his preferred organizational structure. Cannot Diego work under your supervision while maintaining his coordination responsibilities? Surely there must be flexibility in these regulatory interpretations. The supervision requirements are quite specific, Roberto. The responsible engineer must maintain direct oversight and decision-making authority throughout construction phases. Delegation of supervisory responsibilities to unlicensed personnel violates state professional practice standards. The conversation continued for 37 minutes, exploring various approaches that might satisfy regulatory requirements, while accommodating Roberto's desire to maintain Diego's prominent role in project management. Elena explained the legal liability issues associated with professional engineering practice, emphasizing that violations could result in license suspension, financial penalties, and potential criminal charges for individuals who misrepresent their qualifications on public projects. What are our options for addressing this situation before the inspection occurs? Roberto asked, finally acknowledging the seriousness of regulatory compliance requirements. The most straightforward approach involves restoring the organizational structure that designates me as the supervising engineer with direct oversight authority throughout construction phases. This arrangement would satisfy regulatory requirements while allowing Diego to contribute to project coordination under appropriate supervision. Diego appeared increasingly uncomfortable as he processed the reality that his new position had been based on family relationships rather than professional qualifications required for infrastructure projects. Perhaps I could focus on other company projects that do not involve the same regulatory requirements while developing additional qualifications for future infrastructure work. Roberto stood and walked to the window overlooking the construction yard, his posture reflecting the tension between personal preferences and regulatory obligations that he could not modify through executive decisions. This situation demonstrates the excessive bureaucratic control that government agencies exercise over private business operations. These licensing requirements create unnecessary barriers to organizational efficiency. Elena recognized that Roberto's frustration stemmed from discovering that professional licensing served purposes beyond bureaucratic control, protecting public safety through qualification standards that could not be satisfied through family relationships or good intentions. However, challenging his perspective directly would likely escalate tensions without addressing the immediate regulatory compliance issues. The regulatory requirements exist to ensure that complex infrastructure projects maintain appropriate safety standards and professional oversight. The inspection next Tuesday will focus specifically on verifying compliance with these established standards. The meeting concluded with agreements that Elena would resume direct supervisory responsibilities for the Riverside Bridge project, while Diego would transition to other company projects that did not involve state regulatory oversight. Roberto's reluctant acceptance of the arrangement reflected his understanding that regulatory non-compliance could jeopardize the entire project and potentially affect the company's ability to bid on future government contracts. Elena returned to her office carrying the weight of a situation that had created unnecessary complications for a project that should have proceeded smoothly under established professional protocols. Maria Santos looked up from her desk with obvious relief that the regulatory issues were being addressed before the scheduled inspection. Will the organizational changes affect our project timelines or construction schedules? Maria asked, reflecting the practical concerns that occupied the engineering team as they navigated between regulatory requirements and family dynamics. The restoration of appropriate oversight structures should actually improve project efficiency by ensuring that decisions are made by qualified personnel with relevant expertise and legal authority. Elena spent the remainder of the day reviewing project documentation and preparing materials that would be required for the state compliance inspection. The regulatory review would examine every aspect of project oversight to verify that professional engineering standards had been maintained throughout design and construction phases. The afternoon brought a phone call from Mayor Patricia Rodriguez, whose concern about the bridge project had been heightened by rumors of organizational changes within Vasquez Construction. Elena, we have been hearing reports about personnel modifications affecting the bridge project oversight. The City Council needs assurance that professional standards will be maintained throughout construction. Mayor Rodriguez, I can confirm that all regulatory requirements are being addressed, and that qualified professional oversight will continue throughout the construction timeline. The State Professional Engineering Board inspection next Tuesday will verify compliance with all applicable standards. Excellent! The city has significant investment in this project and cannot afford complications that might affect completion timelines or safety standards. We selected Vasquez Construction based on your engineering expertise and professional reputation. After ending the call, Elena reflected on the broader implications of organizational decisions that had created unnecessary risks for projects that affected public safety and involved substantial taxpayer investments. The mayor's confidence in the project had been based specifically on Elena's qualifications and track record, rather than general faith in the company's capabilities. The telephone rang again at 4:15 with a call from the Harbor District Renovation Project Manager, whose concerns about construction oversight had been escalated by rumors of personnel changes affecting other Vasquez construction projects. Elena, we need clarification about the ongoing supervision arrangements for our structural modifications. The building department has raised questions about oversight continuity. Elena spent 23 minutes explaining the regulatory requirements and confirming that professional engineering oversight would continue for all projects requiring licensed supervision. The conversation revealed that municipal authorities throughout the region had become aware of organizational changes and were questioning whether Vasquez Construction could maintain appropriate professional standards. That evening, Elena remained in her office, reviewing state professional engineering regulations and preparing comprehensive documentation for the compliance inspection. The regulatory requirements were explicit about supervision responsibilities, professional liability obligations, and qualification standards that protected public interests through established professional practice protocols. Her computer screen displayed the Professional Engineering Practice Act, which clearly specified that infrastructure projects involving public funding required continuous oversight by licensed engineers whose qualifications met state educational and experience standards. The regulations included specific provisions about supervision delegation, emphasizing that professional engineers could not transfer their legal responsibilities to unlicensed personnel. Elena reviewed the organizational charts that would be examined during the inspection, ensuring that documentation accurately reflected the restoration of appropriate oversight structures. The paperwork would demonstrate compliance with regulatory requirements while documenting the brief period when organizational changes had created potential violations. The building pressure extended beyond regulatory compliance to include professional reputation concerns that affected Elena's standing within the regional engineering community. Colleagues at other firms had begun asking questions about organizational changes at Vasquez Construction, wondering whether Elena's role had been diminished or whether she remained actively involved in major projects. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the structural engineering professor at Stanford, who had served as Elena's graduate advisor and maintained contact throughout her professional career. "Elena, heard some concerning rumors about changes at your company. Hope everything is progressing well with your projects. Call me if you need to discuss anything." The message reflected the reality that professional reputation required years to establish, but could be damaged quickly by organizational decisions that created questions about competence or integrity. Elena's standing within the engineering community had been built through consistent demonstration of technical expertise, ethical practice, and commitment to professional standards that protected public interests. Elena gathered her materials and prepared to leave the office, understanding that the next several days would determine whether the regulatory compliance issues could be resolved without long-term damage to professional relationships or project success. The inspection would either confirm that appropriate standards had been restored or identify continuing violations that could affect multiple projects and professional standing. As she drove home through the evening traffic, Elena reflected on the lessons emerging from the current situation. Professional expertise and regulatory compliance could not be compromised for personal relationships or organizational preferences without creating risks that extended far beyond individual companies. The pressure building around the Riverside Bridge project would ultimately test whether family dynamics could coexist with professional responsibilities in an environment governed by state regulations and public safety requirements. The foundation of professional excellence required constant protection against decisions that prioritized convenience over competence, relationships over qualifications, and personal preferences over regulatory obligations. The mounting pressure would determine whether Elena's commitment to professional standards could navigate family conflicts while preserving the integrity that defined her career and protected public interests. The emergency team meeting convened at 7:30 on Monday morning, one day before the scheduled state compliance inspection that would determine whether Vasquez Construction could maintain its contracts for the Riverside Bridge and other infrastructure projects. Elena had called the gathering after spending the weekend reviewing regulatory documentation and discovering additional complications that extended beyond simple organizational restructuring. The conference room filled with 8 licensed engineers whose collective expertise had built the company's reputation for technical excellence and regulatory compliance. Thomas Kim entered first, carrying thick folders containing structural analysis reports that would be scrutinized during the state inspection. Sarah Martinez followed, her environmental impact documentation organized with the precision that had prevented regulatory delays on previous projects. Dr. Michael Chen arrived with geotechnical assessment reports that verified foundation specifications critical to project approval. Elena stood at the front of the room, reviewing notes that outlined the scope of regulatory challenges facing their engineering division. The state inspection would examine not only current organizational structures, but also recent personnel decisions that had created potential violations of professional engineering practice standards. The consequences could affect every licensed engineer in the room through professional liability implications and regulatory scrutiny of their individual credentials. Thank you all for attending this critical briefing about tomorrow's state compliance inspection. As you know, recent organizational changes have created regulatory concerns that require immediate attention to protect both our projects and our professional standing within the engineering community. Elena paused to ensure that every team member understood the seriousness of the situation they faced collectively. Professional engineering licenses represented years of education, supervised experience, and examination requirements that could be jeopardized by regulatory violations, regardless of whether individual engineers had participated in decisions that created compliance problems. Thomas Kim raised his hand with obvious concern about implications he had been processing since learning about the inspection. Elena, what specific violations are the state investigators examining? I need to understand how this situation might affect my professional license and future project involvement. The primary concern involves the transfer of supervisory responsibilities to personnel who do not possess professional engineering credentials required for infrastructure projects. State regulations require continuous oversight by licensed engineers whose qualifications meet specific standards for public safety protection. Sarah Martinez leaned forward with characteristic directness about regulatory requirements that governed environmental compliance aspects of their projects. Has Diego been making decisions about environmental impact mitigation or construction scheduling that could affect our environmental permits? Those approvals specifically name licensed engineers as responsible parties. Elena consulted her documentation before responding to concerns that revealed the complex interconnections between engineering disciplines and regulatory requirements. Diego has been involved in general project coordination, but environmental decision-making authority has remained with appropriately licensed personnel. However, the state inspection will examine all aspects of project oversight to verify compliance. Dr. Michael Chen shifted uncomfortably in his seat before raising questions about geotechnical oversight responsibilities that required specialized expertise and professional certification. The foundation specifications for the Riverside Bridge include soil-bearing capacity calculations and seismic design parameters that require professional engineering judgment. Has Diego been involved in reviewing or modifying these technical specifications? Diego's involvement has focused primarily on construction scheduling and resource coordination, rather than technical engineering decisions. However, the organizational chart submitted to state agencies initially designated him as Assistant Project Director, with oversight responsibilities that could be interpreted as including technical authority. Elena watched as team members processed the implications of organizational decisions that had created potential liability for professional engineers who had not participated in personnel choices. The room atmosphere shifted from collegial cooperation to defensive concern, as individuals recognized that regulatory violations could affect their professional standing regardless of their personal involvement in creating compliance problems. Jennifer Walsh, the senior structural engineer, whose calculations formed the foundation of their bridge design, asked the question that several colleagues were clearly considering. What protection do we have as individual license holders if the state determines that regulatory violations occurred? Can our professional credentials be affected by organizational decisions we did not make? Elena felt the weight of delivering information that would increase anxiety while providing necessary transparency about regulatory realities. State professional engineering boards evaluate compliance on both organizational and individual levels. While licensed engineers are responsible for projects under their direct supervision, the investigation will examine whether appropriate oversight structures were maintained throughout project development. The tension in the room became palpable, as team members recognized that their professional reputations and career prospects could be affected by administrative decisions that prioritized family relationships over regulatory compliance. Elena observed faces that reflected growing concern about circumstances beyond their individual control. Maria Santos, the environmental compliance specialist whose expertise had ensured project approval through complex regulatory processes, raised her hand with obvious worry about professional consequences. Should we be consulting individual legal counsel about potential liability issues? I have worked for 5 years to establish my professional reputation and cannot afford regulatory problems that could affect future employment opportunities. That decision remains individual choice based on personal risk assessment. The company legal counsel has been consulted about organizational compliance issues, but professional engineering license protection may require independent legal advice for individual team members. Elena recognized that her response had acknowledged the reality that company interests might not align perfectly with individual professional protection needs. The regulatory investigation would examine both corporate compliance and individual engineer responsibilities, creating potential conflicts between organizational loyalty and professional self-preservation. Robert Kim, whose project documentation had been essential for obtaining municipal approvals, stood to address the room with characteristic thoughtfulness about collective action approaches. Perhaps we should consider requesting a meeting with state investigators to clarify our individual roles and responsibilities throughout the organizational transition period. Transparency about professional oversight might demonstrate our commitment to regulatory compliance. That represents an excellent suggestion. I will coordinate with state investigators to arrange individual meetings for team members who wish to clarify their professional involvement and oversight responsibilities throughout recent organizational changes. Elena appreciated Robert's constructive approach to addressing regulatory concerns while maintaining team solidarity under difficult circumstances. The engineering division had functioned effectively through collaborative problem-solving and shared commitment to professional standards that protected both individual careers and public interests. Thomas Kim returned to practical concerns about project continuity and professional responsibilities that extended beyond the current regulatory investigation. If the state inspection results in organizational changes or project supervision modifications, how will that affect our ongoing work and professional development opportunities within the company? The question revealed underlying concerns about career advancement and professional growth that had motivated team members to join Vasquez Construction despite opportunities at larger engineering firms. Elena had created an environment that encouraged innovation, professional development, and collaborative problem-solving approaches that enhanced individual expertise while contributing to company success. Professional development opportunities will continue regardless of organizational restructuring required for regulatory compliance. Our engineering division's reputation for technical excellence and ethical practice represents our most valuable asset for future project opportunities. Elena observed that her response provided reassurance about professional continuity, while acknowledging that regulatory compliance might require modifications to current organizational structures. The team had invested years in developing specialized expertise and collaborative relationships that created competitive advantages for complex infrastructure projects. Dr. Michael Chen raised concerns about external professional relationships that could be affected by regulatory investigations or negative publicity about compliance problems. Several of us maintain consulting relationships with other engineering firms and serve on professional association committees. How should we address questions about our involvement with Vasquez Construction if regulatory issues become public knowledge? Professional integrity requires transparency about our commitment to regulatory compliance and quality standards, regardless of organizational challenges. Our individual reputations have been built through consistent demonstration of technical competence and ethical practice that will withstand external scrutiny. Elena recognized that her team members had developed professional networks and consulting opportunities that extended beyond their employment with Vasquez Construction. Regulatory problems could potentially affect these external relationships if professional colleagues questioned their judgment or association with companies experiencing compliance difficulties. Sarah Martinez returned to immediate practical concerns about project timelines and deliverable responsibilities that could be affected by organizational changes or regulatory requirements. Should we modify our current work schedules or project priorities to accommodate potential changes resulting from the state inspection? Some deliverables have tight deadlines that could be affected by administrative disruptions. Continue with current project responsibilities and timeline commitments while remaining flexible about potential organizational modifications that might be required for regulatory compliance. Quality standards and professional oversight requirements will remain consistent regardless of administrative changes. The meeting continued for an additional 31 minutes, addressing specific concerns about individual professional liability, project continuity, and regulatory compliance strategies that would protect both personal careers and company interests. Elena provided detailed explanations about state professional engineering practice standards, while acknowledging that some decisions would depend on inspection results and regulatory determinations. As the meeting concluded, Elena distributed contact information for the company legal counsel and professional engineering board representatives, who could provide additional guidance about individual rights and responsibilities during regulatory investigations. Team members gathered their materials while processing the reality that their professional circumstances had become complicated by organizational decisions they had not influenced. Walking back to her office, Elena encountered Maria Santos reviewing regulatory documentation with obvious concern about professional implications she had not previously considered. Elena, I appreciate your transparency about the regulatory situation, but I am worried about how this might affect my professional engineering license application that is currently under review. Maria, your technical competence and ethical practice throughout your employment history will support your license application regardless of organizational challenges. Professional engineering boards evaluate individual qualifications and professional conduct, rather than administrative decisions made by company management. Elena spent the remainder of the morning reviewing individual professional files and preparing documentation that would demonstrate each team member's appropriate involvement in technical oversight and decision-making processes. The state inspection would examine both organizational structures and individual professional responsibilities to verify regulatory compliance throughout project development phases. Her telephone rang at 11:45 with a call from Dr. Jennifer Walsh at Stanford University, whose concern about Elena's professional situation had prompted her to research State Professional Engineering Board investigation procedures. Elena, I have been reviewing professional engineering practice standards and want to discuss potential implications of regulatory investigations on individual license holders. Jennifer, I appreciate your concern and would welcome your insights about professional practice standards and regulatory compliance requirements. The situation has created challenges that extend beyond simple organizational restructuring. The conversation continued for 27 minutes, covering professional liability issues, regulatory investigation procedures, and strategies for protecting individual professional standing during organizational compliance reviews. Dr. Walsh's experience with professional engineering board activities provided valuable perspective about investigation processes and potential outcomes. After ending the call, Elena reflected on the fracturing that had occurred within her carefully assembled team of dedicated professionals. Regulatory pressure had transformed collaborative colleagues into individuals concerned about protecting their personal professional interests, creating divisions that had not existed before. Organizational changes prioritized family relationships over technical qualifications. The engineering division had been built through years of selective hiring, professional development, and collaborative problem-solving that created competitive advantages for complex infrastructure projects. The current regulatory crisis threatened to destroy team cohesion, while forcing individuals to choose between organizational loyalty and professional self-preservation. Elena understood that rebuilding team solidarity would require resolving regulatory compliance issues while demonstrating renewed commitment to professional standards that protected both individual careers and public interests. The fractures created by mounting pressure would heal only through consistent demonstration that technical excellence and ethical practice remained organizational priorities despite family relationship complications. The state compliance inspection concluded at 4:30 on Tuesday afternoon, with senior investigator Patricia Morrison delivering preliminary findings that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of Vasquez Construction's operational status. Elena stood in Roberto's office alongside Diego, whose presence had been required for questioning about his qualifications and project oversight responsibilities. The atmosphere carried the weight of regulatory authority that could not be influenced through personal relationships or family connections. Mr. Vasquez, our examination has identified several areas of non-compliance with state professional engineering practice standards. Investigator Morrison announced, consulting comprehensive documentation that had been compiled throughout the day-long inspection process. Most significantly, the organizational structure implemented between October 15 and November 8 delegated supervisory responsibilities to personnel who do not possess professional engineering credentials required for infrastructure projects involving public funding. Elena observed Roberto's expression as he processed the reality that regulatory violations had been documented through official investigation procedures that would become part of the permanent record maintained by state professional engineering authorities. Diego shifted uncomfortably in his chair, apparently beginning to understand that his recent position had exposed both himself and the company to serious legal liability. These violations carry potential penalties including project suspension, contract termination, professional license discipline for responsible engineers, and financial sanctions that could reach $500,000 for repeated or willful non-compliance with professional practice standards. Investigator Morrison continued reviewing specific findings that addressed each aspect of the organizational changes that had transferred technical oversight to unqualified personnel. The documentation included detailed analysis of project supervision requirements, professional licensing verification procedures, and regulatory compliance standards that governed infrastructure development involving taxpayer funding sources. Additionally, our investigation discovered that project coordination responsibilities were assigned to Mr. Diego Vasquez, despite his lack of professional engineering credentials, four-year engineering degree, or supervised experience requirements specified in state professional practice regulations. This assignment created unauthorized practice of engineering violations that carry separate penalties under professional licensing statutes. Elena felt the familiar tension building in her shoulders as she recognized the comprehensive scope of regulatory violations that had been created through organizational decisions, prioritizing family relationships over professional qualifications. The state investigation had examined every aspect of project oversight to verify compliance with standards designed to protect public safety through qualified professional supervision. Roberto finally spoke, his voice carrying none of the confidence that had characterized his previous discussions about organizational efficiency and fresh perspectives. What specific actions are required to address these compliance issues and restore our project authorization? Immediate restoration of appropriate organizational structures, designating licensed professional engineers for all supervisory responsibilities on state-funded infrastructure projects. Complete documentation of corrective measures implemented to prevent future violations. Comprehensive review of all current projects to verify regulatory compliance throughout development phases. Investigator Morrison outlined additional requirements including mandatory compliance training for company personnel involved in project oversight, quarterly reporting procedures for regulatory monitoring purposes, and probationary status that would subject Vasquez Construction to enhanced scrutiny for ongoing and future state contracts. Furthermore, Mr. Diego Vasquez must immediately cease all project oversight activities on infrastructure projects requiring professional engineering supervision. His continued involvement in such capacities would constitute willful violation of professional practice standards and could result in criminal charges for unauthorized practice of engineering. Diego appeared increasingly distressed as he processed the personal implications of regulatory violations that had resulted from his acceptance of responsibilities beyond his professional qualifications. Elena felt sympathy for her half-brother, recognizing that he had been placed in an impossible position by organizational decisions that prioritized family relationships over regulatory compliance requirements. The corrective action plan must be submitted within 72 hours for regulatory review and approval. Implementation of required organizational changes must be completed within 10 business days to avoid project suspension and contract termination procedures. After Investigator Morrison departed, the office fell silent as Roberto and Diego processed the magnitude of regulatory consequences that had emerged from seemingly simple organizational restructuring. Elena remained standing near the window, reviewing mental calculations about the timeline required for implementing corrective measures, while maintaining project schedules and stakeholder commitments. Elena, what specific steps are required to satisfy these regulatory demands? Roberto asked, his tone reflecting newfound recognition that professional engineering standards served purposes beyond bureaucratic control. Complete restoration of the organizational structure that designates me as supervising professional engineer with direct oversight authority for all infrastructure projects. Comprehensive documentation demonstrating that appropriate professional supervision has been re-established according to state regulatory requirements. Elena outlined additional requirements including revised project oversight protocols, updated stakeholder communication procedures, and enhanced documentation systems that would satisfy regulatory monitoring requirements throughout the probationary period. The corrective action plan would need to address every aspect of professional engineering practice standards to restore state confidence in company compliance capabilities. Diego raised his hand with obvious concern about his future role within the organization, following the regulatory determination that his involvement in infrastructure oversight had constituted unauthorized practice of engineering. What responsibilities can I maintain within the company structure while avoiding further regulatory complications? Your construction management certification qualifies you for project coordination roles on commercial and residential projects that do not involve state licensing requirements. Infrastructure projects requiring professional engineering oversight must be supervised exclusively by licensed personnel with appropriate qualifications. Elena recognized that Diego's question reflected genuine interest in contributing to company success, while respecting regulatory boundaries that protected both public safety and professional practice standards. His construction management training provided valuable skills for projects that did not require professional engineering supervision. Roberto walked to his desk and began reviewing project files that would need to be reorganized according to regulatory compliance requirements. How will these organizational changes affect our current project timelines and client commitments? Several projects have critical deadlines that cannot be extended without financial penalties. The restoration of appropriate professional oversight should actually improve project efficiency by ensuring that technical decisions are made by qualified personnel with relevant expertise and legal authority. Regulatory compliance typically reduces rather than increases project complications. Elena spent the next hour explaining specific implementation steps that would satisfy state requirements while maintaining project continuity and stakeholder confidence. The corrective action plan would demonstrate organizational commitment to professional standards through systematic documentation and enhanced oversight procedures. The telephone rang at 6:15 with a call from Mayor Patricia Rodriguez, whose concern about the bridge project had been heightened by reports of state regulatory investigation activities at Vasquez construction facilities. Elena, we need immediate clarification about the status of our bridge project following today's inspection. The City Council requires assurance that professional standards and project timelines will be maintained. Mayor Rodriguez, I can confirm that corrective measures are being implemented to address regulatory compliance requirements, and that qualified professional oversight will continue throughout construction phases. The project timeline should not be affected by organizational restructuring required for state compliance. Excellent. However, I want to emphasize that any future compliance issues or project delays could affect our consideration of Vasquez construction for additional municipal infrastructure projects. Professional reliability represents a critical factor in contractor selection processes. Elena understood that the mayor's warning reflected broader concerns about company reputation and regulatory compliance that extended beyond the current bridge project. Municipal contracts represented substantial revenue sources that required consistent demonstration of professional competence and ethical practice standards. After ending the call, Elena returned to preparing documentation that would be required for the corrective action plan submission. The regulatory requirements were extensive but straightforward, focusing on organizational structure modifications and enhanced oversight procedures that would satisfy professional engineering practice standards. Her computer screen displayed project organizational charts that needed to be revised to reflect appropriate professional supervision relationships. The documentation would demonstrate clear lines of authority and responsibility that satisfied state licensing requirements while maintaining efficient project coordination capabilities. Elena reviewed professional licensing verification procedures that would be required for ongoing regulatory monitoring during the probationary period. The state would examine quarterly reports documenting continued compliance with professional engineering practice standards and organizational structure requirements. The evening hours provided time for reflection about the personal and professional implications of the regulatory crisis that had emerged from organizational decisions prioritizing family relationships over technical qualifications. Elena understood that her position within the company had been vindicated through official regulatory determination rather than internal recognition of her professional value. However, the regulatory validation came with increased responsibilities for ensuring continued compliance with professional engineering standards that protected both public safety and company operations. The probationary status would require enhanced documentation and monitoring procedures that would affect every aspect of infrastructure project management. Elena gathered her materials and prepared to leave the office, understanding that the next several days would determine whether the company could successfully implement corrective measures while maintaining project schedules and stakeholder relationships. The regulatory announcement had crystallized the central conflict between family preferences and professional requirements that governed engineering practice. As she drove home through the evening traffic, Elena reflected on the validation that had come through external regulatory authority rather than internal family recognition. Professional engineering standards existed to protect public interests through qualified supervision that could not be compromised for personal relationships or organizational convenience. The announcement had established clear requirements for organizational restructuring that would restore appropriate professional oversight, while providing Diego with opportunities to contribute within his qualified scope of practice. The regulatory determination offered resolution that satisfied both compliance requirements and family relationship considerations. Elena recognized that rebuilding stakeholder confidence would require consistent demonstration of professional competence and regulatory compliance throughout the probationary period. The corrective action plan represented an opportunity to strengthen organizational systems, while reaffirming commitment to engineering excellence that had originally established company reputation. The foundation of professional standards had withstood pressure from family dynamics and organizational preferences that had temporarily disrupted appropriate supervision structures. The regulatory announcement provided authoritative resolution that would guide future organizational decisions while protecting both public safety and professional integrity that defined Elena's career commitment. Tomorrow would begin the implementation phase that would restore appropriate professional oversight while demonstrating organizational learning from regulatory violations that had resulted from prioritizing relationships over qualifications. The announcement had clarified requirements that would govern all future infrastructure projects, while establishing Elena's authority through official regulatory determination rather than family acknowledgement. The corrective action plan required immediate implementation to satisfy the 72-hour submission deadline established by the State Professional Engineering Board. Elena arrived at the office Wednesday morning at 6:30, 2 hours before normal business operations, to begin drafting comprehensive documentation that would demonstrate organizational commitment to professional engineering practice standards. The silence of the empty building provided necessary focus for addressing regulatory requirements that would determine whether Vasquez Construction could maintain its infrastructure project contracts. Roberto's Mercedes was already in the executive parking space when Elena walked through the main entrance, indicating that he had arrived even earlier to process the magnitude of changes required for regulatory compliance. The previous evening had concluded with tense family discussions about professional responsibilities, business operations, and organizational restructuring that would affect every aspect of company management moving forward. Elena found Roberto in his office reviewing financial projections that calculated the potential cost of regulatory penalties, project suspensions, and lost future contracts if compliance requirements were not satisfied within specified timelines. His desk was covered with legal documents, regulatory statutes, and professional engineering practice guidelines that outlined specific standards for infrastructure project oversight and supervision. Elena, I have been reviewing the regulatory requirements throughout the night, and I recognize that my organizational decisions created serious complications for our business operations and professional standing. Roberto acknowledged, his tone reflecting newfound understanding of professional engineering standards that governed infrastructure development. What specific actions must be taken immediately to satisfy state compliance requirements? Elena felt a mixture of vindication and concern as she observed her father grappling with regulatory realities that she had attempted to explain during previous discussions about organizational restructuring. The state investigation had provided external validation of professional engineering standards that could not be compromised through family relationships or administrative preferences. The corrective action plan must demonstrate complete restoration of appropriate organizational structures, with licensed professional engineers maintaining direct oversight authority for all infrastructure projects involving state funding sources. Additionally, comprehensive documentation must verify that qualified personnel have assumed all supervisory responsibilities previously assigned to unlicensed personnel. Elena outlined specific requirements including revised organizational charts, updated project oversight protocols, enhanced documentation procedures, and mandatory compliance training for all personnel involved in infrastructure project management. The regulatory submission would need to address every aspect of professional engineering practice standards to restore state confidence in company compliance capabilities. Roberto consulted the legal documents that company attorneys had provided during emergency consultations about regulatory violation implications and corrective action requirements. What timeline considerations must be addressed to prevent project suspension or contract termination procedures? Several clients have expressed concern about potential delays affecting their project schedules. The 10-day implementation deadline requires immediate notification to all stakeholders about organizational changes that restore appropriate professional oversight. Client communications should emphasize that qualified professional supervision will enhance rather than disrupt project efficiency and regulatory compliance. Elena began drafting stakeholder communication templates that would explain organizational restructuring as proactive measures to strengthen professional engineering oversight rather than corrections of regulatory violations. The messaging would need to maintain client confidence while acknowledging that enhanced compliance procedures would govern all future project development phases. Diego entered the office at 7:45, his expression reflecting the anxiety that had developed since learning about regulatory violations associated with his assignment to infrastructure project oversight responsibilities. His construction management training had not included comprehensive education about professional engineering practice standards or regulatory compliance requirements that govern state-funded infrastructure development. Elena, I want to understand what responsibilities I can maintain within the company while ensuring that no further regulatory complications occur, Diego asked, his tone indicating genuine concern about contributing to company success without creating additional compliance problems. The state investigator emphasized that unauthorized practice of engineering violations carries serious personal legal consequences. Elena appreciated Diego's recognition that professional engineering practice standards served legitimate purposes beyond bureaucratic control, protecting public safety through qualified supervision that required specific educational backgrounds, professional licensing, and supervised experience requirements. His willingness to accept appropriate role limitations demonstrated maturity and understanding about regulatory compliance importance. Your construction management certification qualifies you for project coordination responsibilities on commercial and residential developments that do not involve professional engineering oversight requirements. These projects represent substantial company revenue sources that would benefit from your practical construction experience and scheduling expertise. Elena reviewed specific project categories that would appropriate for Diego's qualifications, while ensuring complete separation from infrastructure projects requiring professional engineering supervision. The role definition would provide meaningful responsibilities while maintaining clear boundaries that satisfied regulatory compliance requirements. Roberto reviewed the organizational chart revisions that would need to be implemented immediately to satisfy state compliance requirements. How will these changes affect our current staffing requirements and operational efficiency? The engineering division has been operating at capacity to manage multiple concurrent projects. The restoration of appropriate professional oversight should improve operational efficiency by ensuring that technical decisions are made by qualified personnel with relevant expertise and legal authority. Professional engineering supervision typically reduces project complications rather than creating additional administrative burden. Elena explained that regulatory compliance often enhanced project efficiency through systematic decision-making processes, appropriate documentation procedures, and qualified technical oversight that prevented costly construction errors or regulatory delays. Professional engineering standards had been developed through decades of experience with infrastructure projects that required specialized expertise for successful completion. The telephone rang at 8:20 with a call from city engineer Michael Chen, whose review of project oversight documentation had identified discrepancies that required immediate clarification about professional supervision arrangements for the Riverside Bridge construction phases. Lena, we need updated organizational charts and professional licensing verification for all personnel involved in bridge project oversight. The city legal department requires confirmation that appropriate professional supervision has been maintained throughout recent organizational changes. Michael, I am preparing comprehensive documentation that will verify appropriate professional engineering oversight for all aspects of bridge construction. The organizational restructuring will strengthen rather than compromise professional supervision quality and regulatory compliance procedures. Elena spent 27 minutes explaining the corrective action implementation timeline while providing assurances that professional engineering standards would be enhanced through systematic oversight procedures and comprehensive documentation requirements. The city engineer expressed satisfaction with the corrective measures, while emphasizing that continued regulatory compliance would be monitored throughout construction phases. After ending the call, Elena returned to preparing the corrective action plan submission that would be required for state regulatory review within 48 hours. The documentation needed to demonstrate complete understanding of professional engineering practice standards while outlining specific implementation steps that would satisfy ongoing compliance monitoring requirements. Her computer screen displayed regulatory compliance checklists that addressed organizational structure requirements, professional licensing verification procedures, project oversight protocols, and documentation standards that would govern infrastructure project management throughout the probationary period. Each requirement reflected established professional engineering practice standards that protected public safety through qualified supervision. Elena reviewed professional liability insurance requirements, that would need to be updated to reflect organizational changes and enhanced oversight responsibilities. The insurance coverage modifications would demonstrate financial commitment to professional engineering standards while providing protection against potential liability associated with infrastructure project development. The morning brought additional telephone calls from stakeholders who had learned about regulatory investigation activities through professional networks or municipal communication channels. Each conversation required careful explanation of corrective measures, while maintaining confidence in company capabilities and professional commitment to regulatory compliance standards. Maria Santos arrived at 8:45 with preliminary documentation that had been prepared for the corrective action plan submission. Her administrative expertise had been essential for organizing comprehensive regulatory compliance materials, while maintaining current project documentation requirements and stakeholder communication procedures. Elena, I have compiled the organizational charts, professional licensing verification documents, and project oversight protocol revisions that will be required for the state submission. The legal department has reviewed all materials for accuracy and regulatory compliance. Elena appreciated Maria's thorough preparation of complex documentation that would demonstrate organizational commitment to professional engineering standards while satisfying specific regulatory submission requirements. The materials would need to address every aspect of compliance concerns identified during the state investigation. Excellent work, Maria. Please ensure that all stakeholder notification letters are prepared for immediate distribution following state approval of our corrective action plan. Client communications should emphasize that enhanced professional oversight will improve rather than disrupt project quality and timeline adherence. Elena reviewed the stakeholder communication templates that would explain organizational changes as proactive measures to strengthen professional engineering capabilities rather than corrections of regulatory violations. The messaging would need to maintain business relationships while acknowledging enhanced compliance procedures that would govern future project development. The afternoon was dedicated to finalizing documentation that would satisfy every aspect of regulatory compliance requirements while demonstrating comprehensive understanding of professional engineering practice standards. Elena worked with legal counsel to ensure that corrective action commitments were realistic and achievable within specified timelines, while providing adequate protection against future compliance problems. Roberto returned to Elena's office at 3:15 to review the completed corrective action plan before submission to state regulatory authorities. His expression reflected a combination of concern about potential business implications and recognition that professional engineering standards served legitimate purposes that could not be compromised through organizational preferences. Elena, this documentation demonstrates the comprehensive scope of professional engineering requirements that I did not fully understand when making previous organizational decisions. I want to acknowledge that your expertise and regulatory knowledge have been essential for addressing this situation effectively. Elena felt satisfaction at Roberto's recognition of professional engineering standards while understanding that regulatory compliance represented ongoing responsibility rather than temporary corrective action. The probationary status would require sustained demonstration of appropriate professional oversight and enhanced documentation procedures throughout future project development phases. Professional engineering practice standards exist to protect public safety through qualified supervision that cannot be compromised for personal relationships or organizational convenience. The corrective action implementation will strengthen our professional capabilities while ensuring continued regulatory compliance for all infrastructure projects. The corrective action plan was submitted to the State Professional Engineering Board at 4:30 Wednesday afternoon, well within the 72-hour deadline established during the compliance inspection. Elena felt cautious optimism that the comprehensive documentation would satisfy regulatory requirements while demonstrating organizational commitment to professional engineering excellence that had originally established company reputation. The immediate aftermath had required intensive effort to address regulatory compliance requirements while maintaining project continuity and stakeholder confidence. Elena understood that successful implementation would require sustained attention to professional engineering standards throughout the probationary period, but the foundation had been established for restoring appropriate organizational structures that protected both public safety and business operations. The State Professional Engineering Board approved the corrective action plan on Friday afternoon, with conditional acceptance that required weekly progress reports documenting implementation of organizational changes and enhanced oversight procedures. Elena received the approval notification while reviewing construction progress reports from the Riverside Bridge project, where foundation work had commenced under her restored supervisory authority following regulatory compliance requirements. Roberto scheduled an immediate management meeting to discuss implementation strategies that would satisfy regulatory monitoring requirements while maintaining project efficiency and stakeholder confidence. The meeting convened at 4 o'clock in the main conference room, with attendance including Elena, Diego, senior project managers, and the company legal counsel who had guided the corrective action development process. The state approval provides clear direction for organizational restructuring that will strengthen our professional engineering capabilities while ensuring continued regulatory compliance, Roberto announced, his tone reflecting newfound appreciation for professional standards that governed infrastructure project development. Elena will oversee implementation of enhanced oversight procedures that demonstrate our commitment to professional engineering excellence. Elena reviewed the specific requirements that would govern company operations throughout the 6-month probationary period established by state regulatory authorities. Weekly progress reports would document organizational structure compliance, professional licensing verification procedures, project oversight protocols, and enhanced documentation standards that satisfied professional engineering practice requirements. The implementation timeline requires immediate notification to all stakeholders about organizational changes that restore appropriate professional supervision arrangements. Client communications will emphasize that enhanced oversight procedures will improve project quality and regulatory compliance, rather than creating administrative complications. Diego raised his hand with obvious concern about his transition to responsibilities that aligned with his construction management qualifications, while avoiding infrastructure projects requiring professional engineering oversight. What specific projects will be assigned to my coordination responsibilities, and how will role boundaries be maintained to prevent future regulatory complications? Elena consulted project documentation that had been reorganized according to regulatory compliance requirements, separating infrastructure projects requiring professional engineering supervision from commercial and residential developments that could be managed through construction management expertise. Your responsibilities will include the West Side Commercial Plaza renovation, the Hillcrest Residential Development Coordination, and the Industrial Park Phase 2 expansion project. These assignments provide substantial project management opportunities while maintaining clear separation from infrastructure projects requiring professional engineering oversight. The role definition reflected careful consideration of Diego's construction management training, while ensuring complete compliance with professional engineering practice standards that govern state-funded infrastructure development. Elena had worked with legal counsel to establish clear boundaries that protected both regulatory compliance and family relationship considerations. Roberto reviewed financial projections that calculated the business impact of organizational restructuring required for regulatory compliance. What effect will these changes have on our operational efficiency and project profitability? Several clients have expressed concern about potential cost increases associated with enhanced oversight procedures. Enhanced professional oversight typically improves project efficiency through systematic decision-making processes, appropriate documentation procedures, and qualified technical supervision that prevents costly construction errors or regulatory delays. Professional engineering standards reduce rather than increase overall project costs through proactive problem prevention and quality control measures. Elena explained that regulatory compliance often enhanced project profitability through reduced liability exposure, improved stakeholder confidence, and competitive advantages associated with demonstrated professional engineering capabilities. Companies that maintained exemplary regulatory compliance records attracted premium contracts and repeat business from municipal and state agencies. The legal counsel reviewed liability protection benefits associated with appropriate professional engineering oversight, emphasizing that qualified supervision reduced exposure to construction defect claims, regulatory penalty assessments, and professional liability lawsuits that could result from inadequate technical oversight or unauthorized practice violations. Over the following weeks, Elena observed the learning curve that emerged as Roberto and Diego developed deeper understanding of professional engineering requirements that governed infrastructure project development. Roberto began attending professional engineering continuing education seminars to enhance his comprehension of technical standards and regulatory compliance obligations that affected company operations. Diego enrolled in additional construction management courses that would expand his qualifications while maintaining appropriate boundaries regarding professional engineering practice. His enthusiasm for learning demonstrated genuine commitment to contributing effectively within his qualified scope of practice, while respecting regulatory requirements that protected public safety through specialized expertise. The weekly progress report submitted to the State Professional Engineering Board documented systematic implementation of enhanced oversight procedures and organizational structure modifications that satisfied regulatory compliance requirements. Elena prepared comprehensive documentation that demonstrated organizational learning and commitment to professional engineering excellence beyond mere regulatory obligation. Project stakeholders began recognizing the enhanced professional capabilities that resulted from systematic implementation of professional engineering standards throughout company operations. City engineer Michael Chen commended the improved technical documentation and systematic oversight procedures that had been implemented for the Riverside Bridge construction phases. Elena, the enhanced oversight procedures have resulted in notably improved construction quality and regulatory compliance documentation. The systematic approach to technical decision-making has prevented several potential problems that might have created costly delays or safety concerns during construction phases. Municipal engineering departments throughout the region began requesting Vasquez construction for infrastructure projects that required exemplary professional engineering oversight and regulatory compliance capabilities. The company reputation for technical excellence and ethical practice standards attracted premium contracts that provided competitive advantages in an increasingly demanding marketplace. Elena recognized that the learning curve experience had transformed organizational understanding of professional engineering value beyond mere regulatory compliance requirements. Roberto developed genuine appreciation for technical expertise and systematic approaches that protected both public safety and business interests through qualified professional oversight. I have gained significant understanding about the complexity of professional engineering requirements and the value that specialized expertise provides for infrastructure project success, Roberto acknowledged during a quarterly review meeting. The systematic approaches and enhanced oversight procedures have improved our project quality while strengthening stakeholder confidence in our professional capabilities. Diego reported substantial progress in his construction management professional development, while expressing appreciation for role clarity that aligned with his qualifications and interests. The construction management responsibilities provide excellent learning opportunities while allowing me to contribute meaningfully without creating regulatory complications. I have developed better understanding of professional boundaries and the importance of specialized expertise for complex infrastructure projects. Elena felt satisfaction observing the organizational learning that had resulted from regulatory compliance implementation. The enhanced understanding of professional engineering standards had strengthened company capabilities while improving family relationships through shared commitment to professional excellence and ethical practice. The Harbor District renovation project provided additional evidence of improved project outcomes resulting from systematic professional engineering oversight and enhanced quality control procedures. Environmental compliance documentation and structural modification approvals were completed ahead of schedule due to proactive planning and comprehensive technical analysis that prevented regulatory delays. Thomas Kim reported significant improvements in project coordination efficiency resulting from clear professional oversight protocols and systematic documentation procedures. The enhanced oversight structure has eliminated confusion about technical authority and decision-making responsibilities. Project teams understand their roles and can focus on technical excellence rather than administrative complications. Sarah Martinez observed similar improvements in environmental compliance procedures that resulted from systematic oversight and enhanced documentation standards. The professional engineering oversight has strengthened our environmental impact assessments and regulatory compliance strategies. Municipal agencies have expressed confidence in our systematic approaches to environmental protection and regulatory adherence. Elena reviewed quarterly performance metrics that documented measurable improvements in project quality, stakeholder satisfaction, and regulatory compliance outcomes resulting from enhanced professional engineering oversight implementation. The systematic approaches had generated competitive advantages that attracted new business opportunities while strengthening existing client relationships. Professional Engineering Board monitoring visits documented exemplary compliance with organizational structure requirements and enhanced oversight procedures that exceeded regulatory expectations. The company had transformed regulatory obligations into competitive advantages through systematic implementation of professional engineering excellence standards. Vasquez Construction has demonstrated exceptional commitment to professional engineering standards through comprehensive implementation of enhanced oversight procedures and organizational structure modifications. Reported the State Compliance Monitor during a quarterly review. The systematic approaches to technical oversight and regulatory compliance represent best practices that exceed minimum regulatory requirements. Elena recognized that the learning curve experience had created organizational transformation that extended far beyond regulatory compliance requirements. The enhanced understanding of professional engineering value had strengthened company capabilities while improving project outcomes through systematic technical oversight and quality control procedures. Roberto scheduled a company-wide meeting to recognize the successful completion of regulatory compliance implementation and the enhanced professional capabilities that had resulted from systematic organizational learning. The past 6 months have demonstrated the value of professional engineering expertise and the importance of maintaining appropriate oversight standards for all infrastructure projects. The meeting provided opportunity for Elena to address the entire organization about professional engineering standards and the systematic approaches that had transformed regulatory obligations into competitive advantages. Her presentation emphasized the connection between technical excellence, ethical practice, and business success that characterize sustainable professional engineering careers. Professional engineering standards exist to protect public safety through qualified oversight that requires specialized education, supervised experience, and ongoing professional development. These requirements create competitive advantages for organizations that embrace systematic approaches to technical excellence and regulatory compliance. Elena concluded her presentation by acknowledging the collaborative effort that had enabled successful regulatory compliance implementation while strengthening organizational capabilities and professional relationships. The learning curve experience had transformed initial regulatory challenges into opportunities for professional growth and enhanced business performance. The organizational learning demonstrated through systematic implementation of professional engineering standards had created foundation for continued growth and competitive success in infrastructure development markets that demanded exemplary technical expertise and regulatory compliance capabilities. The enhanced understanding of professional engineering value would guide future organizational decisions while protecting both public interests and business objectives through qualified professional oversight. The first indication of underlying problems emerged during the monthly project review meeting in January, where Elena discovered that construction schedules for the West Side Commercial Plaza had fallen 3 weeks behind projected timelines. Diego presented his progress report with noticeable hesitation, explaining that coordination challenges had created delays that affected both material delivery schedules and subcontractor availability for critical construction phases. Elena reviewed the project documentation that Diego had prepared, noting several scheduling conflicts that suggested inadequate understanding of construction sequencing requirements and subcontractor coordination protocols. The commercial plaza renovation involved complex mechanical, electrical, and plumbing system upgrades that required precise coordination between multiple specialized trades working in confined spaces with limited access points. Diego, could you explain the specific coordination challenges that have affected the construction timeline? Understanding the root causes will help us develop strategies for preventing similar delays on future projects. Diego consulted his project files before responding with obvious uncertainty about technical aspects of the coordination problems he had encountered. The electrical contractor indicated that the mechanical system installations were not completed according to the originally planned sequence, which prevented them from beginning their rough-in work as scheduled. When I reviewed the plans, the sequencing requirements were not entirely clear to me. Elena recognized immediately that the sequencing challenges reflected insufficient understanding of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing coordination requirements that demanded specialized knowledge of system interdependencies and installation protocols. Commercial renovation projects required comprehensive understanding of how different building systems interacted during construction phases to prevent costly delays and rework situations. The electrical rough-in work must be coordinated with mechanical system installations, because both trades require access to ceiling and wall cavities during specific construction phases. The project specifications include detailed sequencing requirements that prevent conflicts between different trade installations. Elena retrieved the original project specifications and reviewed the coordination protocols that clearly outlined required installation sequences for all building systems. The documentation included comprehensive schedules that coordinated electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and finish work to optimize construction efficiency while preventing trade conflicts that could create delays or quality problems. Roberto observed the technical discussion with growing concern about project management complications that were affecting construction timelines and potentially creating additional costs that had not been anticipated in original project budgets. What specific steps are required to address the current delays and prevent similar coordination problems on future commercial projects? The immediate priority involves meeting with all trade contractors to establish revised sequencing schedules that account for current construction progress while preventing additional coordination conflicts. Long-term prevention requires enhanced understanding of building system interdependencies and coordination requirements that govern commercial construction projects. Elena outlined specific training recommendations that would enhance Diego's understanding of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing coordination requirements, while providing practical knowledge about construction sequencing protocols that prevented trade conflicts during complex renovation projects. The training would strengthen his project management capabilities while maintaining appropriate boundaries regarding technical oversight responsibilities. Over the following weeks, additional coordination challenges emerged on the Hillcrest residential development project, where foundation work had encountered unexpected soil conditions that required engineering analysis and potential design modifications. Diego had attempted to address the foundation problems through discussions with excavation contractors, but lacked the technical expertise necessary for evaluating soil-bearing capacity requirements and foundation design adequacy. Elena, we have encountered clay soil conditions on the Hillcrest project that were not identified during the initial site investigation. The excavation contractor is recommending foundation design modifications, but I am not qualified to evaluate whether these changes are appropriate or necessary. Elena reviewed the soil condition reports and excavation contractor recommendations, immediately recognizing that foundation design modifications required professional engineering analysis that could not be delegated to construction management personnel. Soil-bearing capacity calculations and foundation design adequacy represented specialized technical decisions that required professional engineering expertise and state licensing authority. Foundation design modifications require comprehensive geotechnical analysis and structural engineering calculations that must be performed by licensed professional engineers. The soil condition changes may affect foundation loads, bearing capacity requirements, and overall structural stability considerations that demand specialized expertise. Elena arranged for immediate geotechnical testing and structural engineering analysis that would determine appropriate foundation design modifications while ensuring compliance with building code requirements and structural safety standards. The technical analysis required specialized knowledge that extended beyond construction management qualifications and emphasized the importance of maintaining clear boundaries regarding professional engineering responsibilities. The foundation problems resulted in 2-week construction delays while comprehensive technical analysis was completed and appropriate design modifications were developed through professional engineering review processes. The delays affected project schedules and created cost implications that had not been anticipated in original project budgets. Roberto expressed frustration about project delays and cost increases that were affecting company profitability and client satisfaction ratings. These technical problems are creating financial implications that extend beyond the specific projects to affect our overall business performance and client relationships. What strategies can prevent similar problems on future projects? Proactive technical oversight during project planning phases can identify potential problems before they affect construction schedules and project costs. Professional engineering review of site conditions, design adequacy, and construction coordination requirements prevents costly surprises that emerge during construction phases. Elena emphasized that professional engineering involvement during project planning typically reduced rather than increased overall project costs through proactive problem identification and comprehensive technical analysis that prevented construction delays and design modifications. The systematic approaches to technical oversight represented essential risk management strategies for complex construction projects. Meanwhile, the Industrial Park Phase 2 expansion project encountered environmental compliance complications when excavation work revealed potential contamination that required immediate testing and possible remediation measures. Diego contacted environmental testing laboratories but lacked the expertise necessary for interpreting contamination assessment results and determining appropriate remediation requirements. The environmental testing laboratory provided soil contamination analysis results, but their recommendations for remediation measures are highly technical and include regulatory compliance requirements that I do not fully understand. The potential contamination could affect project permits and construction authorizations. Elena reviewed the environmental testing results and regulatory compliance requirements, recognizing that contamination remediation involved specialized environmental engineering analysis and regulatory coordination that required professional expertise beyond construction management qualifications. Environmental compliance violations could result in project suspension and substantial financial penalties that affected both current projects and future permitting authority. Environmental contamination remediation requires specialized expertise in environmental engineering, regulatory compliance procedures, and remediation technology selection that must be coordinated with state environmental protection agencies. These technical decisions cannot be made without appropriate professional qualifications and regulatory authority. Elena coordinated with environmental engineering consultants and regulatory agencies to develop comprehensive remediation strategies that satisfied environmental protection requirements while minimizing project delays and cost implications. The environmental compliance process required specialized knowledge of contamination assessment procedures, remediation technology options, and regulatory approval processes that extended far beyond construction management expertise. The environmental complications created additional 3-week delays, while contamination remediation was completed according to state environmental protection requirements. The remediation costs exceeded original project budgets by approximately $47,000, affecting project profitability and creating client relationship challenges that required diplomatic communication about unforeseen circumstances. Thomas Kim observed the pattern of technical complications that had emerged across multiple projects managed through construction management oversight rather than professional engineering supervision. Elena, these coordination problems and technical challenges appear to reflect systematic issues rather than isolated incidents. The pattern suggests inadequate technical oversight during project planning and implementation phases. Elena recognized that Thomas had identified the fundamental problem that affected projects managed without appropriate professional engineering involvement during planning phases. Construction management expertise provided valuable capabilities for project coordination and scheduling, but could not substitute for specialized technical knowledge required for complex building systems, foundation design, and environmental compliance issues. Professional engineering oversight during project planning phases identifies potential technical challenges before they affect construction schedules and project costs. The systematic approach to technical analysis prevents problems rather than responding to complications after they create delays and cost implications. Sarah Martinez reported similar observations about environmental compliance complications that could have been prevented through proactive environmental engineering assessment during project planning phases. The environmental contamination problems represent issues that professional environmental assessment would have identified before excavation work commenced, allowing for appropriate planning and budgeting of remediation requirements. Elena scheduled individual meetings with Roberto and Diego to discuss the pattern of technical complications that had emerged across projects managed without appropriate professional engineering oversight during planning phases. The conversations would address systematic improvements that could prevent similar problems while maintaining role clarity that satisfied regulatory compliance requirements. The technical complications that have affected recent projects demonstrate the importance of professional engineering involvement during project planning phases, regardless of whether state regulatory requirements mandate professional oversight for specific project types. Proactive technical analysis prevents costly surprises and improves project outcomes. Roberto acknowledged the pattern of problems while expressing concern about cost implications associated with enhanced professional engineering involvement on commercial and residential projects that did not require state regulatory oversight. What cost-benefit analysis supports expanded professional engineering involvement on projects that do not mandate specialized technical oversight? Professional engineering involvement during planning phases typically reduces overall project costs through problem prevention, improved construction coordination, and enhanced quality control that prevents costly rework and delay situations. The investment in technical oversight generates returns through improved project efficiency and reduced risk exposure. Elena provided comprehensive analysis of cost implications and risk management benefits associated with systematic professional engineering involvement across all project types. The data demonstrated that proactive technical oversight generated measurable returns through improved project outcomes, reduced liability exposure, and enhanced client satisfaction that supported long-term business growth objectives. The first cracks in the organizational structure had revealed fundamental limitations of construction management expertise when applied to complex technical challenges that required specialized professional engineering knowledge. The pattern of problems provided compelling evidence for the value of systematic technical oversight that extended beyond minimum regulatory compliance requirements to include proactive risk management and quality improvement strategies. The cascade of complications accelerated in February when the Westside Commercial Plaza electrical contractor submitted a formal claim for additional compensation due to coordination delays that had extended their installation timeline by 4 weeks. The claim totaled $63,000 in overtime labor costs, equipment rental extensions, and schedule acceleration expenses that resulted from mechanical system installation conflicts that could have been prevented through proper construction sequencing coordination. Elena reviewed the electrical contractor's documentation, while Roberto examined the financial implications of accepting responsibility for coordination failures that had created substantial cost overruns affecting project profitability. The contractor's analysis clearly demonstrated that inadequate coordination during project planning phases had resulted in preventable conflicts between electrical and mechanical installations that required costly resolution measures. The electrical contractor's claim appears to be justified based on the coordination problems that occurred during the mechanical system installation phase. Elena observed while reviewing technical documentation that supported the contractor's position. The delays resulted directly from sequencing conflicts that proper coordination protocols would have prevented during project planning phases. Roberto reviewed construction contracts and insurance coverage provisions that might address the additional costs associated with coordination failures. What liability exposure do we face for similar coordination problems on other active projects? These cost implications could affect our overall business performance if coordination issues are creating systematic problems across multiple construction sites. Elena consulted project documentation for other commercial and residential developments managed through construction management oversight, identifying potential coordination vulnerabilities that could create similar contractor claims and cost overruns. The analysis revealed systematic gaps in technical oversight that affected project planning, construction sequencing, and quality control procedures across multiple active construction sites. The coordination problems reflect insufficient technical oversight during project planning phases rather than isolated incidents on individual projects. Without systematic improvement in technical coordination procedures, similar problems will likely affect other active projects and create additional contractor claims for delay-related costs. The domino effect extended beyond immediate financial implications to include insurance coverage complications, when the company liability carrier initiated a comprehensive review of recent claims related to construction coordination failures and technical oversight inadequacies. The insurance investigation examined project management procedures, technical oversight protocols, and professional qualification standards that governed construction supervision responsibilities. Maria Santos coordinated with insurance investigators while preparing comprehensive documentation about organizational structure changes and enhanced oversight procedures that had been implemented following state regulatory compliance requirements. The insurance review would examine whether coordination improvements had been systematically implemented to prevent future claims related to technical oversight failures. The insurance carrier requires detailed analysis of corrective measures that have been implemented to address coordination problems and prevent similar technical oversight failures on future projects. Maria reported while organizing documentation that demonstrated enhanced project management procedures. They are particularly concerned about systematic patterns that could indicate ongoing liability exposure. Elena recognized that insurance coverage implications extended far beyond individual project claims to affect overall business operations through premium adjustments, coverage limitations, or policy cancellation procedures that could jeopardize the company's ability to obtain bonding and insurance coverage required for construction contracts. Professional liability exposure represented a critical business risk that required systematic technical oversight improvements. Meanwhile, the Hillcrest residential development encountered additional foundation complications when soil testing revealed expansive clay conditions that required specialized foundation design modifications to prevent structural damage from soil volume changes during seasonal moisture variations. The foundation redesign necessitated engineering analysis that exceeded Diego's construction management qualifications and created additional project delays while professional engineering consultants developed appropriate technical solutions. Diego contacted Elena immediately upon discovering the soil condition complications, recognizing that foundation design modifications required professional engineering expertise that he did not possess. Elena, the geotechnical testing revealed expansive clay conditions that the foundation contractor indicates will require specialized design modifications to prevent structural problems. I understand that these technical decisions require professional engineering analysis rather than construction management coordination. Elena arranged for comprehensive geotechnical analysis and structural engineering review that would determine appropriate foundation design modifications while ensuring compliance with building code requirements and soil condition management protocols. The technical analysis required specialized knowledge of soil mechanics, foundation design principles, and structural engineering calculations that demanded professional licensing authority and specialized expertise. Expansive clay conditions require specialized foundation design approaches that account for soil volume changes and moisture variation effects on structural stability. The foundation modifications must be developed through comprehensive engineering analysis that considers soil characteristics, structural loads, and long-term performance requirements under varying environmental conditions. The foundation redesign process required 3 weeks of technical analysis and regulatory approval procedures, while soil stabilization measures were developed and implemented according to professional engineering specifications. The design modifications increased foundation costs by approximately $38,000 while creating schedule delays that affected other construction phases and subcontractor coordination requirements. Robert Kim observed the systematic pattern of technical complications that continued to emerge across projects managed without appropriate professional engineering oversight during planning phases. Elena, these foundation problems represent the third major technical complication that has affected projects assigned to construction management oversight rather than professional engineering supervision. The pattern suggests fundamental inadequacies in technical planning procedures. Elena acknowledged Robert's observation while emphasizing that professional engineering involvement during project planning phases would have identified soil condition risks and foundation design requirements before construction commenced, allowing for appropriate planning and budgeting of technical measures required for successful project completion. Proactive technical analysis prevented costly surprises that emerged during construction phases. Professional engineering site assessment during project planning phases identifies geotechnical challenges and foundation design requirements that affect construction costs and scheduling. The systematic approach to technical analysis prevents problems rather than responding to complications after they create delays and cost overruns. The Industrial Park Phase 2 expansion project experienced additional environmental compliance complications when remediation work revealed more extensive contamination than originally identified, requiring expanded soil excavation and treatment procedures that affected project permits and construction authorizations. The environmental compliance process required coordination with state regulatory agencies and specialized environmental engineering expertise that extended far beyond construction management qualifications. Diego coordinated with environmental consultants while recognizing that contamination remediation decisions required specialized technical expertise and regulatory authority that he did not possess. The environmental contamination extends beyond the originally identified area and requires additional remediation measures that involve complex regulatory compliance procedures. The environmental engineering consultants are recommending expanded soil treatment that will affect project costs and construction timelines. Elena reviewed environmental testing results and regulatory compliance requirements, coordinating with environmental engineering specialists and state regulatory agencies to develop comprehensive remediation strategies that satisfied environmental protection standards, while minimizing project delays and cost implications. The environmental compliance process required specialized knowledge of contamination assessment procedures, remediation technology selection, and regulatory approval processes. Environmental contamination remediation requires specialized expertise in environmental engineering analysis, regulatory compliance coordination, and remediation technology implementation that must satisfy state environmental protection requirements. These technical decisions demand professional engineering qualifications and regulatory authority that cannot be delegated to construction management personnel. Quote, "The expanded environmental remediation created additional delays of 5 weeks, while contamination treatment was completed according to state environmental protection standards. The remediation costs increased by $72,000 beyond original estimates, creating substantial budget overruns that affected project profitability and required diplomatic client communication about unforeseen environmental conditions." Thomas Kim prepared comprehensive analysis of cost overruns and schedule delays that had affected all 3 projects managed through construction management oversight rather than professional engineering supervision. Elena, the collective cost implications of coordination problems, foundation complications, and environmental issues have exceeded $200,000 in additional expenses and contractor claims across the 3 projects managed without appropriate technical oversight. Elena reviewed Thomas's financial analysis while preparing recommendations for systematic improvements in technical oversight procedures that would prevent similar problems on future projects. The cost implications demonstrated compelling business justification for enhanced professional engineering involvement during project planning phases, regardless of whether state regulatory requirements mandated specialized technical oversight. The cost overruns and delay implications clearly demonstrate that professional engineering involvement during project planning phases generates measurable returns through problem prevention, improved coordination, and enhanced quality control. The investment in technical oversight produces savings that exceed the costs of professional engineering services through risk management and efficiency improvements. Sarah Martinez observed similar patterns in environmental compliance complications that could have been prevented through proactive environmental engineering assessment during project planning phases. The environmental problems represent issues that professional environmental analysis would have identified before construction commenced, allowing for appropriate planning and budgeting of remediation requirements while preventing regulatory compliance delays. Elena scheduled comprehensive meetings with Roberto and Diego to discuss systematic improvements in technical oversight procedures that would prevent similar problems while maintaining role clarity that satisfied both regulatory compliance requirements and business efficiency objectives. The conversations would address cost-benefit analysis of enhanced professional engineering involvement across all project types. The pattern of technical complications demonstrates that professional engineering oversight during project planning phases provides essential risk management that prevents costly problems while improving overall project outcomes. The systematic approach to technical analysis generates measurable business benefits through enhanced efficiency and reduced liability exposure. Roberto acknowledged the compelling evidence of cost implications while expressing concern about budget implications of expanded professional engineering involvement on commercial and residential projects. The cost overruns clearly demonstrate problems with current technical oversight procedures, but we need to understand the financial implications of enhanced professional engineering involvement across all project types. Elena prepared comprehensive cost-benefit analysis that demonstrated how professional engineering involvement during planning phases generated returns through improved project outcomes, reduced liability exposure, and enhanced client satisfaction that supported long-term business growth. The analysis included specific calculations showing that technical oversight costs represented small percentages of overall project budgets, while preventing cost overruns that substantially exceeded professional engineering service expenses. The domino effect had revealed the interconnected nature of technical expertise and project success, demonstrating that professional engineering knowledge created value across all construction project types through systematic risk management and quality improvement strategies. The cascade of complications provided compelling evidence that technical oversight represented essential business investment rather than unnecessary expense that could be eliminated through organizational preferences or cost reduction measures. The emergency board meeting convened on March 15, with an agenda focused exclusively on addressing the mounting project complications and cost overruns that threatened to undermine Vasquez Construction's financial stability and professional reputation. Roberto had assembled the company's 5 board members, including external advisors from the construction industry and financial sector, to evaluate strategic responses to systematic problems that had emerged across multiple active projects. Elena entered the boardroom carrying comprehensive documentation that quantified the financial impact of technical oversight deficiencies, while outlining systematic solutions that would prevent future complications through enhanced professional engineering involvement. The presentation materials included detailed cost-benefit analyses, risk assessment reports, and implementation timelines for organizational improvements that would strengthen technical oversight capabilities. Board Chairman William Patterson reviewed financial statements that documented the collective impact of project delays, cost overruns, and contractor claims that had affected company profitability during the first quarter. Roberto, these financial indicators suggest systematic problems that extend beyond isolated project complications. We need immediate strategies for addressing operational issues that are affecting multiple construction contracts simultaneously. Roberto acknowledged the scope of problems while emphasizing that corrective measures were being developed to address technical oversight deficiencies and prevent similar complications on future projects. Elena has prepared comprehensive analysis of the technical challenges and recommended solutions that will strengthen our project management capabilities while reducing liability exposure and cost overrun risks. Elena reviewed the systematic pattern of complications that had affected projects managed without appropriate professional engineering oversight during planning phases. Her analysis demonstrated clear correlations between technical oversight adequacy and project outcomes across commercial, residential, and infrastructure development categories that comprise the company's primary business operations. The project complications reflect insufficient technical oversight during planning phases rather than random incidents or external factors beyond company control. Professional engineering involvement during project development prevents coordination problems, foundation design inadequacies, and environmental compliance issues that create costly delays and contractor claims. Board member Patricia Morrison questioned the cost implications of enhanced professional engineering involvement across all project types, expressing concern about service expenses that might affect project profitability and competitive bidding capabilities. What specific return on investment can be documented for expanded professional engineering services that extend beyond minimum regulatory requirements for infrastructure projects? Elena presented comprehensive financial analysis demonstrating that professional engineering oversight during planning phases generated measurable returns through problem prevention, improved construction coordination, and enhanced quality control that reduced overall project costs while minimizing liability exposure and insurance claim risks. The data included specific calculations comparing technical oversight expenses with cost savings achieved through systematic risk management procedures. Professional engineering services typically represent 2 to 4% of total project costs, while preventing cost overruns that frequently exceed 15 to 20% of original project budgets. The investment in technical oversight produces documented savings that substantially exceed service expenses through improved project efficiency and reduced risk exposure. Board member Michael Chen examined insurance implications and liability exposure concerns that had emerged from recent contractor claims and project complications. What impact will these technical oversight improvements have on our insurance coverage and premium costs? The liability carrier has expressed concern about systematic patterns that could affect policy renewal and coverage availability. Elena reviewed insurance carrier requirements and professional liability considerations that would be addressed through enhanced technical oversight procedures and systematic quality improvement measures. The insurance implications extended beyond immediate claim resolution to include long-term coverage availability and premium cost management that affected overall business operations and competitive positioning. Enhanced professional engineering oversight demonstrates proactive risk management that insurance carriers evaluate favorably when determining coverage terms and premium calculations. Systematic technical quality improvement reduces claim frequency and severity while strengthening the company's insurance profile for policy renewal and coverage expansion purposes. Quote, Roberto outlined desperate measures that had been considered for addressing immediate financial pressures, including accelerated project completion strategies, subcontractor cost negotiations, and potential contract modifications that might reduce cost overrun exposure on current projects. The measures reflected urgent attempts to control financial damage while avoiding systematic changes that addressed root causes of technical oversight deficiencies. We have explored various approaches for minimizing current project losses while maintaining client relationships and contract obligations. However, these short-term measures do not address the fundamental technical oversight issues that are creating systematic problems across multiple project categories. Elena recognized that desperate measures focused on immediate cost control would not resolve underlying technical oversight deficiencies that continued to create new problems, as additional projects encountered planning inadequacies and coordination failures. The systematic approach required comprehensive organizational improvements, rather than temporary solutions that addressed symptoms without correcting fundamental causes. Effective resolution requires systematic enhancement of technical oversight procedures during project planning phases, rather than reactive measures that attempt to control costs after problems have created delays and complications. Professional engineering involvement during project development prevents problems that generate expensive corrective measures and contractor claims. Board Chairman Patterson reviewed implementation timelines for organizational improvements that would restore investor confidence and stakeholder support, while addressing operational problems that threatened long-term business viability. What specific timeline is required for implementing technical oversight improvements that will prevent similar problems on future projects while addressing current project complications? Elena outlined phased implementation procedures that would enhance professional engineering involvement across all project types, while maintaining current contract obligations and completion schedules. The implementation plan included immediate measures for active projects experiencing complications and systematic improvements for future project development that would prevent similar technical oversight deficiencies. Immediate implementation of enhanced technical oversight on active projects will prevent additional complications, while systematic improvements in project planning procedures will ensure that future projects benefit from comprehensive professional engineering involvement during development phases. The phased approach addresses both current problems and long-term operational improvements. The desperate measures discussion revealed the extent to which technical oversight deficiencies had affected multiple aspects of business operations, including client relationships, subcontractor coordination, insurance coverage, and financial performance indicators that attracted investor attention and stakeholder concern about company management capabilities and strategic direction. Board member Jennifer Walsh examined competitive implications of enhanced professional engineering involvement, questioning whether service expenses would affect bidding capabilities and market positioning in construction sectors that emphasized cost minimization over technical excellence. How will expanded professional engineering services affect our competitive position when bidding against contractors who minimize technical oversight expenses? Elena addressed competitive positioning considerations through analysis of market trends that increasingly favored contractors with demonstrated technical expertise and quality assurance capabilities over those competing primarily on cost minimization strategies. The construction industry had evolved toward greater emphasis on professional competence and risk management that created competitive advantages for companies with superior technical oversight capabilities. Market trends favor contractors with demonstrated professional engineering capabilities and systematic quality assurance procedures over those competing primarily on cost reduction strategies. Enhanced technical oversight creates competitive differentiation that attracts premium contracts and repeat business from clients who prioritize professional competence and project quality. Roberto acknowledged that competitive positioning required balancing cost control with technical excellence, while maintaining capabilities that attracted high-value contracts and satisfied demanding client requirements. The company had built its reputation through technical competence and quality workmanship that commanded premium pricing and generated repeat business from satisfied clients who valued professional expertise. Our competitive advantage has historically been based on technical excellence and professional competence rather than cost minimization strategies. Enhanced professional engineering oversight strengthens these competitive differentiators while addressing operational problems that threaten our reputation and client relationships. The board meeting continued with detailed examination of cash flow implications, contract modification possibilities, and stakeholder communication strategies that would address immediate financial pressures while implementing systematic improvements in technical oversight procedures. The discussions revealed the complexity of addressing operational problems that affected multiple business dimensions simultaneously. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.